They say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. If you look closely at the timeline of human civilization, you start to see a rhythm, a heartbeat. It's a pulse that has beaten for 5,000 years, rising and falling with terrifying precision. We stand today in the shadow of the greatest economic superpower the world has ever known. The United States controls the global reserve currency, boasts the most powerful military in history, and serves as the cultural center of the modern world. It feels permanent, feels unsinkable. But walking through the marble ruins of Rome in 400 AD, a Roman citizen felt exactly the same way. Walking along the canals of Amsterdam in the 1700s, a Dutch merchant felt the same way. And standing in London in 1900, a British banker felt the same way. They were all wrong. There is a mathematical lifespan to empires. On average, a global superpower maintains its dominance for roughly 250 years. The United States declared its independence in 1776. That makes the American experiment 249 years old. If history is a clock, America is seconds away from midnight. But this isn't a video about doom and gloom. It is a video about patterns. Because when you strip away the flags, the languages, and the different time periods, you realize that every single empire dies of the exact same disease. They all go through the same 5 stages of life, and more importantly, the same 5 stages of death. The question isn't whether the collapse is coming. The question is, which stage are we in right now? And once you see the signs, you will never look at the news the same way again. To understand our future, we have to rewind to the 17th century. Imagine you are in Amsterdam in the year 1650. The Dutch Republic is the center of the universe. They have invented the stock market. Their ships dominate the oceans, carrying spices and silk that make their merchants richer than kings. The Dutch guilder is the world reserve currency, meaning every other nation on earth holds it, trusts it, and uses it to trade. This is what we call Stage 1, the rise. In Stage 1, the money is sound. It is backed by hard assets, gold and silver. The country is rich because it is productive. They make things the world wants. They work hard, they save money, and they invest in education and infrastructure. It is a golden age. But prosperity breeds something dangerous: complacency. By the time we reach the 1700s, the Dutch aren't working as hard. They are richer, yes, but they've become expensive. Their workers demand higher wages, making their products less competitive. Other nations, specifically, the British, start copying their technology and producing goods cheaper. This leads us to Stage 2, the peak. In the peak, the empire shifts from making money to spending money. The society becomes obsessed with decadence. You see a massive boom in financial speculation. In the Netherlands, this manifested as tulip mania, where people traded entire houses for a single flower bulb. It was insanity, driven by the belief that the good times would never end. The gap between the rich and the poor begins to widen aggressively. The city centers are paved with gold, while the outskirts begin to rot. Then comes the turning point. The Dutch get involved in expensive conflicts, specifically wars with England. Wars are expensive. They cost more money than the government has in the bank. So, what do? They can't raise taxes because the people are already squeezed. So, they do the only thing they can. They borrow. This is Stage 3, the decline. The government begins to manufacture money. In the old days, they clipped coins, shaving off the edges of gold coins to melt down and make new ones. In modern times, we print paper or add zeros on a computer screen. The result is the same. The currency loses its value. For the Dutch, the end came when the Bank of Amsterdam, once the most trusted institution in Europe, admitted it had lent out more money than it actually had. Trust evaporated overnight. Merchants stopped accepting the guilder. Capital fled the country and moved to London. The Dutch Empire didn't disappear, but it became irrelevant. The heartbeat of the world moved to England and the British Empire. They followed the exact same script. 19th century Britain, the Industrial Revolution. The pound sterling is as good as gold. They own a quarter of the planet. But then, stage 2 hits. They become arrogant. Stage 3. They get involved in massive conflicts, World War I and World War II. To pay for these wars, Britain borrows astronomical amounts of money from a rising power across the Atlantic, the United States. By 1945, Britain was technically a victor, but financially, they were a corpse. They were drowning in debt. The final nail in the coffin wasn't a bomb. It was a currency crisis. The world realized the British pound was diluted, backed by nothing but debt. In a matter of years, the world's reserve currency shifted from the pound to the dollar. The British Empire was over. So, here is the pattern. It is undeniable. Stage 1. Good money, high production, low debt. Stage 2. Overconfidence, financial bubbles, rising inequality. Stage 3. Massive debt accumulation, usually due to war or overconsumption. Stage 4. Currency debasement, printing money to pay the bills. Stage 5. Loss of trust and the collapse of the currency. Now, take a deep breath. Let's look at the United States today. The U.S. emerged from World War II as the undisputed king. It held 80% of the world's gold. It was the world's factory. The dollar was literally as good as gold. That was stage 1. Then came the boom. The 80s and 90s, financialization took over. We stopped manufacturing steel and started manufacturing derivatives. Wall Street became the engine, not Detroit. We saw the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble. We saw the wealth gap explode to levels not seen since the Great Depression. That was stage 2. Then came the wars. Afghanistan, Iraq. Trillions of dollars spent on conflicts that had no economic return. Simultaneously, the government began expanding social programs that were becoming impossible to fund. The national debt began to climb. But the real shift, the moment historians might look back on as the beginning of the end, happened in 1971, when President Nixon severed the link between the dollar and gold. From that moment on, the constraints were gone. The U.S. could print as much as it wanted. And that brings us to the terrifying reality of right now. We are firmly, undeniably, deep inside stage 4. Let's look at the data. It is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of arithmetic. The United States national debt has surpassed $34 trillion. That number is so big it is meaningless to the human brain. So let's put it this way. The U.S. government now spends more money paying interest on its debt than it spends on its entire national defense. Think about that. The greatest military power on earth is paying more to its bankers than to its soldiers. And how is the government paying these bills? They aren't raising taxes. They are printing money. In the last 4 years alone, the U.S. created nearly 40% of all dollars that have ever existed in history. This is the classic signature of stage 4, debasement. You feel this every time you go to the grocery store. Politicians call it supply chain issues or corporate greed, but the economic reality is simpler. It is the devaluation of your labor. The money in your pocket is dying. But stage 4 isn't just about economics. It's about society. When the money breaks, the social contract breaks. Look at the polarization in America today. The populism, the anger, the loss of trust in institutions, media, government, banks. This is exactly what happened in Rome before the fall. This is what happened in France before the revolution. When the standard of living drops for the average person while the elites at the top seem to get richer, the glue that holds a society together begins to dissolve. Internal conflict is the hallmark of late-stage empires. We are seeing a country that is tearing itself apart from the inside. too distracted by cultural wars to notice the financial tsunami approaching from the horizon. So, what is Stage 5? Stage 5 is the loss of the reserve currency status. This is the moment the music stops. For decades, the U.S. has had a superpower called exorbitant privilege because the world needs dollars to buy oil and conduct trade. There is always a demand for U.S. debt. America can print money, export the inflation to the rest of the world, and buy cheap goods in return. It is the greatest economic cheat code in history, but the world is watching. They see the debt. They see the weaponization of the dollar through sanctions, and they are making their moves. We are seeing the rise of the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and their new members. They are actively building a payment system to bypass the dollar. Central banks around the world are buying gold at a record pace, the highest levels in 50 years. Why? Because they know the game is ending. They are preparing for a world where the dollar is just another currency, not the king. If the dollar loses its global status, the consequences for the American way of life will be immediate and brutal. All those dollars floating overseas will come flooding back home. Hyperinflation won't just be a word in a textbook. It will be the price of bread. Interest rates will skyrocket. The government will be forced to choose between defaulting on its debt or printing so much money that the currency becomes worthless. History tells us that this transition is rarely peaceful. When an empire falls, it creates a vacuum, and chaos rushes in to fill that vacuum. This sounds terrifying, and it should be. The complacency of the last 30 years has left us vulnerable. We have ignored the lessons of Rome, of Amsterdam, of London. We believed we were special. We believed that the laws of economic gravity didn't apply to us. But here is the final thought, the takeaway that you need to carry with you. The collapse of an empire doesn't mean the end of the world. Rome fell, but Italy is still there. The British Empire collapsed, but London is still a financial hub. The system resets. The chess pieces move. The danger lies in denial. The danger is for those who keep their wealth in the old system, believing it will last forever. The danger is for those who do not understand the history of money. We are living through a changing of the guard. The storm is already here. It's just that the rain hasn't started falling on everyone yet. You cannot stop the cycle. You cannot stop the tectonic plates of history from shifting. But you can prepare. You can educate yourself. You can diversify. You can become resilient. And you can open your eyes. The sun is setting on the old order. The only question remains, what will you do when the lights go out? This is Economy Rewind. If you want to understand the mechanics of the machine, if you want to see the roadmap before the road runs out, make sure you are subscribed. We will see you in the next one.